Look out!
I put a giant roof rack, Molle panel style, that goes up and down the whole top of the truck. What do I think of it? How'd it go on? The pluses and minuses.
Let's start with the unboxing, or at least the dragging out of the garage, I should say.
Now that's heavy.
And it was crazy heavy. This thing took 2 adult grown men UPS drivers to bring to my front door. But once you have it open, you see why. It's just a lot of steel and heavy aluminum pieces. For what it's worth, they were all really well packaged with individual layers of foam. And as you'll see here in a second, after I get these all out, even the individual pieces are wrapped in a bag, so to be really careful as not to scratch any of these parts up. And for what it's worth, out of the packaging, it looked at least somewhat obvious what went where.
And it does come with 5 pages, front and back, of pretty detailed instructions. I've got it all laid out here on the ground behind me because I'm a visual person. I like to kind of see what's going on. You have these large braces with 2 little gaps on the bottom of them. These are going to bolt down to those roof racks. It's easy to get these on which side because they are all labeled with both a letter and a number, this one being R4. Now this is R for right, and it's right as if you're driving the car, so right would be on the passenger side. Left is going to be here on the driver's side. Starting with the smallest numbers you can see here, L1, going down to L2, L3, then the one that's laying down there is the L4. Well, in a fun turn of events, it actually just started pouring rain here, so I'm kind of standing underneath this little lip here of my garage. These are really nice because they're actually labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then additionally, the little smaller brackets here on the inside are also labeled, but 5, 6, and 7. Now 5 and 7 are the same exact size as one another because the gap in between brackets from the front to the middle and the back to the middle is a little bit smaller than that larger one in the middle. So I laid these all out here on the driver's side, and actually the same exact thing over here on the passenger side, just so I know where all the pieces are. The only thing left is to put these brackets here on the individual posts all the way up the truck. So there is going to be one small complication that I've run across so far with this install, but there's obviously an easy way around it. If you're not familiar, these just lay flat on a normal basis, and when you put the slightest pressure on them, they kind of tip up to open up to expose these 2 little bolts inside. This fits over here great. That's not the problem. But as you can see, when this sets on here, I'm actually hitting this little piece of plastic.
Then as I assumed it would be, this was a really easy fix. There's just 2 little nubs of plastic on each end of this cover that you can just push out with a flathead screwdriver, and that whole thing comes out. And with that out, this vertical bracket just fits right down over top of those 2 studs and now fits flush with the top of the truck.
Then I'm gonna repeat that same thing, taking out all of these little plastic clips all the way up to the top of the truck. As you saw earlier, there are 4 different ones. This, of course, is 4, which is the biggest. L4, meaning the driver's side, left as if you're driving. That bolt requires a 10mm nut, which comes with the kit. And in case you didn't have one, it actually includes a little wrench in that kit, but you know I'm gonna probably use my electric one. And since these bolts are actually set down in here a little bit, I grabbed a deep well, still 10mm socket to fasten these on with.
As I snug all of these brackets down going up the truck, let me give you fair warning. A lesson I've learned the hard way is it's really easy to drop one of those nuts and lose them in the opening cavity of the truck. So be careful as you're putting those on. And I have found it easier to do 1 nut at a time and then go back and fasten down the other
Now
one.
with those 8 different brackets secure all the way up and down the truck, So as it turns out, this was not the next step. Let me explain. If you notice behind me, I already have these on, but they're about to come off because I messed up. Some of the complaints I get in my video is that I make it look easier than it actually is because sometimes I think I make mistakes. I don't let you all see. Well, this is one of them. I put all these panels on. In fact, I recorded all the video, showed you how I did it. And then I realized the crossbars that go on, those actually have to go on first. I'm gonna take these off, and then next you'll pick up with the step that I actually should have done. So now that I've got those panels back off, now it's time to put those crossbars on. Again, number 1's gonna be all the way up to the front of the truck, and it's gonna be the largest, and 2, 3, and 4. I already have number 3 set into place. You'll see up there. So I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna fasten that down with 2 little torque screws. So here's that 3rd bracket put into place. So let me show you exactly where to let it fall. So if you'll notice here, this is on the 4th bracket, I've got these little dashes. So those little dashes are gonna be to where the edge of this little bar sets. You don't want it all the way flush, nor do you want it all the way back. Until we get this on, there's just way too much play involved. And here's the screws we're putting in. They have the little Torx head, which is a T25 Torx, which I'm putting on a drill.
And to continue showing you mistakes I made,
That wasn't supposed to happen.
and let it never be said again that I make things look too easy because I don't show you my screw-ups, because here's yet another one. As I move the camera, it slowly drifts off its tripod and crashes off the truck. And here's what you missed. I've screwed these in right to the edge of that line from the top on each side.
Only thing that was a little tricky about this is this little ovular hole here is actually also, of course, too wide for the washer to fit down in between. So you actually have to slide the washer in here and kind of get that into place. And then you're gonna end up putting this little Torx head screw down through the top, through that. And here's a top view of that, sliding in the washer and putting that bolt in. That one bracket's down. Now I need to get the other three into place. All right, so I have my hands on number one bracket. So I've already attached this little guy to it here. So if you notice, this has 2 screws going in from the bottom and then 2 screws going here on the end. But I thought it was easiest to get this little bracket on top of this plate first. Eventually, you're gonna have that cross bracket, that little T that comes through the middle. It's gonna set onto here. But again, I think it's gonna be a lot easier to get this on now. So we'll see.
I went ahead and set crossbars 1 and 2 on each of their brackets.
And then the same thing here with the number 4. You see here, the cross panel that goes all the way across the top. I put this bracket on also. I just left those 2 screws aren't yet out, and I've only put 1 screw down there in the bottom.
So after I balanced the 4th crossbar onto its respective brace, I then went by systematically with my drill, again still using that T25 Torx driver to put those 2 bolts in each end of each bracket, at least of the 3 that I could reach from the bed of the truck.
3 down, 1 to go.
And then from the running boards, fastened in the final 2 on each side of the front.
Now that I have all 4 of those brackets on, I can start putting these little side panels on. This is gonna be the top to all of them, but you'll just notice this one here has a little gap on the bottom of it. If you know you have the gap on the bottom, then it's the driver's side, but this little gap here is gonna go around the buttons on the top of the truck. And then eventually, this little bracket here on the edge is gonna butt up against the little brackets that we have all individually. Now these little brackets up across, 1 through 4, all have like a nut, like a female nut that is welded to it. It's part of it through this bracket and mounting it into the edge of the truck. And this is going to be on both sides. Then this bracket here, these 2 brackets right here and right here are going to go on the inside between those 2 main brackets. And it's actually a really snug fit when it's together. The same exact things with this 3rd panel and eventually that 4th panel.
Again, this is not complicated, but it is a pretty tight fit, which I think is actually a good thing.
Then the same steps over on the passenger side. And once we get the passenger side on, I'll jump inside the bed here and I'll add all the bolts into those individual columns. So here's the first piece here on the passenger side. If you'll notice, this one's solid all the way down because there's no buttons on the passenger side to be cut out for.
And then obviously these ones here on the passenger side go on just like the ones on the driver's side.
Now those bolts in the middle are 2 10mm bolts. They're like a hex head bolt. They're gonna look like this. And they're gonna have a little washer, it's gonna fit over top of it. Now I have found putting these on, I do in some cases have to shuffle these around a little bit to fit right, eventually all fall into place.
Now again, you may have to shuffle these around just a little bit, but it's really easy when you're looking at it. You just make the hole line up with the other hole and you put the bolt through. Then obviously you're gonna do this on each side, 2 on each side of each of those vertical columns all the way around. On the driver's side, then as you can see here on the passenger side.
So now I've got it 90% together. I just have some cross brackets to go, but as you can see, it's getting a little dark out here, so I think I'm gonna call it a night, but I'll see you in the morning as we'll get those little T inserts into the middle. I'll give you the full review.
The next morning.
This is tomorrow for me, 2 seconds later for you. Now I'm gonna install the little cross brackets to go all the way up the truck. So like I have one here that's labeled 5. So 5 is gonna be the first one here. Then 6 is gonna be the one in the middle. And then 7, again, will be that one on the end. Now 5 and 7 are actually the same exact size. So I showed you earlier, I have this bracket here that I've already put on the end.
And as you can faintly see from the underside, there's 4 little holes for bolts to go into, the one of which is already in. Then on the very end, there's 2 more T25 bolts that go in there, and that leaves a little platform for that cross brace to sit on top of.
This is that middle bracket. Again, this is gonna go here on the bottom side of this, somewhere like this, and it's going to screw into it from the bottom. And this same exact bracket that looks just like this is going to go here on the 3rd bracket. Then that end one is going to look again just like this one here on the front, but on that side. So again, the 4 little screws, they're going to go up into this bracket are all the same. That T25, it's that Torx head bit.
On this one, I just had to make sure I didn't fully fasten one down to allow a little bit of play to get the other 3 in.
And as mentioned before, an identical bracket here on this 3rd rail, which is going to be rail number 2.
I started all these nuts by hand because when they were all the way at the bottom, I couldn't fit my drill into place there with the increasingly shrinking angle of the roof.
So now with these 4 brackets on, it's time for these center brackets. And let me correct something I said earlier. I said 5 and 7 were the same size. They are, but they're not the same ends. One of these ends doesn't have a female to screw into, and that's the end, which is number 5. That's gonna go all the way up at the front of the truck. So now I've set these all into place, which is 7, 6, and 5 up there by the front of the truck.
And the crossbars have a female thread welded into it.
The same T25 bolt we've been using to fasten all these brackets in, we're gonna screw up through the hole in the bottom of the bracket, and it's gonna go into the little nut here on the top.
So I put these 2 screws down in the very end bracket, and then there's 4, which each of these X's that kind of meet in the middle, both connecting bars 3 and bars 2. Now this one that's up here towards the top of the truck, again, it started by hand before finally finishing it.
There's so many different brackets here, it'd be almost impossible for it to be totally square, which of course it's not. I have a couple of these panels, one in particular that's right in front of me here, that's a little bit racked. So you can see this here, I'm a little bit unlevel, but I'm not totally fastened down. So I'm thinking I'm actually gonna loosen up some of these bolts down below here from both panels, this 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm thinking if I loosen those, I can balance them all into place and they'll all fall in, and then eventually I can put these screws here in the top and it'll all be really secure.
So in hindsight, I probably got these bolts too tight to begin with, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I just had to go back here and loosen them all up, both on the sides and the tops, to give me some room. And as you can see, it did fall into place much better after that.
So as you saw, I did get these now really level. They're even here, they're even all the way down, no overlap. So I am thinking though, because there is still a little bit of bind I can feel, I'm gonna be putting these 2 screws in here next, and then I'll tighten up these bolts down the brackets.
So now with those 10mm bolts loose on all those vertical brackets, I was able to go back and put those T25 Torx down into the tops. Now I did, as you see here, have to like bang them around just a little bit, but with those bolts loose, they did settle at least much better.
I'm gonna go around and tighten all these different 4 brackets on each of these posts down all the way around. And lastly, I have this piece that the directions call a spoiler. And if you get to this point, it's gonna be pretty obvious where this goes. It's gonna go on the top of the truck just like this, and we're gonna bolt in these little brackets down below. Now there are some brackets you can put here in the middle, but I think you could potentially avoid them, but we'll see.
Again, these are using the same T25 bolts. There's 3 on each end, 2 on the large part towards the back and 1 on the front.
This is the bracket I was referencing earlier. It's labeled C1. In theory, this goes underneath the spoiler, and you can bolt it with bolts through here to the actual rack. Then you can put extra bolt through the spoiler into this. I just didn't think it was necessary, so I thought it was adding excess weight. As you can see here, it's not like this has a bunch of play, especially because it has this little angle in it that adds a certain level of rigidity that I don't think these are necessary, but if you want to do it, go for it. And now with everything put together, it's really pretty wild how much rigidity it has. I mean, this thing is super, super sturdy. In fact, it's so sturdy, it can handle my 200+ pound frame.
So let me get up top to show you.
As you can see, when I jump, I'm shaking the entire truck. I'm not just moving this frame at all. This is incredibly sturdy. I wouldn't have to think twice about putting anything heavy up here no matter what it was. If it was ladders, lumber, bicycles, cargo boxes, you name it, it wouldn't be any problem. And I think what makes it so sturdy is the fact that it mounts into all these different 8 brackets up and down the truck. So before we get to some of the pluses, here's some of the downsides. So these 10mm bolts and those T25 bolts that go in here are just a little on the soft side. Not soft like they're just gonna shear off and things are gonna go flying off in the wind, not like that. But the biggest problem I see is the heads of these are easy to round off. And it's the same thing for the female of that T25 screw. You saw earlier in the video, I put some of this on, took it back off because I screwed up the order. Those T25, that female that goes in there, if I took these on, put it off, took it off, put it back on, once I do that a couple times, these really start to round out, and it's actually the same thing for these 10mm. Now, that's not the end of the world. Just want you all to be aware that that is something that to me is pretty normal when you buy something like this. These bolts are going to hold just fine. They might be a little bit more prone to stripping out, and it's not a big deal because you can always get more of these at your local hardware store. They're both really common sizes. The next downside is this rack is semi-permanent. Now, could I get it off? Sure. But there's not an easy way to do it. I'd have to almost disassemble it piece by piece, leaving very few of these together. It would probably take me an hour to disassemble this, maybe 30 minutes if I was really focused on it. Most items I'm putting in the truck fit below the bed line, so I might end up just leaving this on. But I was a little disappointed that there wasn't just an easy way to be able to pop this off and pop it back on. And one last point of note, not really a plus or a minus, but obviously this rack occupies all of the studs all the way down the truck. You wouldn't be able to use this in conjunction with any kind of light bar or something like that that needs to be attached to those anchor points. The last negative, again, this is a small issue, but assumingly you're getting this rack because you are an actual working man, you're gonna be using this for tools, rough construction type work, you're going to scratch this up. Even in the little bit I've had it, I do have some scratches. As you can see here, I scratched this up, and again, I might have done this on the asphalt, and I noticed here I've got a scratch up here on this side, and then here on the driver's side, I had some nicks over here. To be clear, not a huge deal to me because it has to be painted or else it would rust. If you're going to be using this as a work truck, you're gonna have some scratches on it. And then to round it out with some of the positives that really I've already talked about, this thing is a total beast. I mean, it is rugged, it's sturdy, it's strong. If you're looking to mount heavy things on top of this, again, whether it's lumber or ladders, that's what I most commonly have on my truck, that's going to be like a non-factor. And the last upside, which is probably the most important of all of them, and perhaps also the most overlooked if you don't think about it. The benefit of this rack compared to the other 2 racks I've had in the car in the past is this one allows cargo to sit perfectly flat. I can now put any kind of sheeting or lumber on the top of this rack and it's set totally flat. Now, I could put things like this on the rack before, but they still sat at that extreme angle, which made it really difficult for me to fasten down. And while sure, I could put things like lumber and sheeting in the bed of the truck, often if I have things like that, it's because I'm working and I have other things, specifically my tools, in the bed of the truck, and it's really complicated to take all that out just to add that material in the bed. It'd be much more convenient to be able to put on top, which I now can. And on that same note of benefits that now you have a level platform to work off of, it makes it much more convenient for things like overlanding and camping, which the truck is very much designed to do. In addition to have a much larger storage area inside the bed of the truck, you now have that totally flat frame on top if you could put something like a pop-up camper. This was not a possibility with the previous design of the truck. Even simple things like my cargo box here set so much better on a level surface. Normally, you would think if you had a big accessory like this in your truck, it would make it stand out. But weirdly, I actually think that it makes it blend in. So if you're trying to hide the gaudiness that is the Cybertruck, which I personally love, this actually will help you do that. And even from the front, thanks to that little spoiler, it's a really sharp look. It almost could be stock or factory. Now, I do have those 2 little holes in it up top where I didn't take advantage of those center bracks. But actually, if you subscribe to the channel, I think I'm going to be adding some lights to those holes. And for what it's worth, I have another rack that's very similar but different coming in the mail. Should be here any day. So I'm going to be throwing that on next. And of course, then once I got them both on, I'll give you the review of which one I like best, plus and minuses. But this one here is a beast. As always, thanks for watching. Subscribe. Don't miss that comparison video. See you in the next one.